bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 582. Corona doesn't give you coronavirus. For Monday, March 2nd, 2020, it's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. What exactly qualifies as content marketing? Again and again, award shows in our business default to long-form ads as meeting the definition. But does recognizing ads obscure the real potential of the tactic? Tonight, we'll discuss. Also, propping up revenue with streamer acquisitions, the impact of fast food marketing on teens, what's keeping travel influencers at home, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder of communications firm Future Fourth, keynote speaker and author, Mr. Dave Delaney. Dave, welcome back, man.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
And with him, we're happy to welcome back as well the VP of Decision Strategy at Quantum Metric, Ms. Tamara Gaffney is here. Tamara, hi.
Hi, everyone. It's so fun to be back on the BeanCast. Always a great time.
Yeah, we always have a good time on this show because we're always talking about the crazy things that go on in marketing. And one of the craziest things that's been going on is what's happening in the content marketing space. So let's get into our first story. Robert Rose of the Content Marketing Institute took on the Ad Age Content Marketing Award for naming 3 ads as finalists. Now, in the narrowest of definitions, the submissions by HBO, Sandy Hook Promise, and Skittles the Musical are long-form videos, so I guess they could be considered content. I mean, if it's longer than a 60-second, I guess it's content, but it doesn't need a whole lot of imagination to get Rose's point, because all 3 of these videos are shot and paced and look like ads, with the maybe exception that the Skittles musical was also partly a musical that was staged here in New York. But Dave, first, does it matter about this definition? Does it really matter whether we call content marketing? And then if so, why or why not? So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it does matter. It does matter. I've always said that content can be anything you create and publish online. So anything you publish online can be content, a tweet, a photo, whatever. But content marketing is, it's content that you strategically create and hopefully with a measurable objective and a target audience in mind, right? So when you actually create content with something in mind, strategically, where advertising is more, often you're going for more impressions. With content, strategic, like content marketing, you're actually trying to attract, you're trying to interact with people. When you sent me this topic, I was excited, and I actually picked off my bookshelf a copy of C.C. Chapman and Ann Handley's 2011 book, Content Rules.
I am chapter 20.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I was flipping through it, and Ann and C.C. are good friends. And I was flipping through it, and yeah, sure enough, the BeanCast and Bob, you're featured in that book. I will also slip a little, shameless plug that I am also in the book.
Yes, I know.
We are so old school.
I'm feeling left out now.
I know. You'll be in the next edition, I'm sure.
Okay.
But anywho, the book has some really great, obviously great points about content marketing, but. They wrote in it that they mentioned how marketing to your customers by interrupting them repeatedly with advertising or other marketing messages is simply not enough anymore. And so I liked in Robert's article, he wrote the biggest reason content marketing fails in business is because operating and measuring the approach is misunderstood, which gets to CMI's definition of content marketing, which I really like. It's content marketing is a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. So, I think.
But doesn't that describe that describes every one of these videos that were made finalists for this award? I mean, there's not. You can say that that's true about all three of these ads. I mean, they're ads, let's face it, but their content, they fit that definition in the broadest sense of the definition.
I think advertising is part of the content marketing mix, let's say, right? So,
right.
I mean, advertising can certainly be used in conjunction with a strategic content marketing plan. So advertising can help drive people to, let's say, a unique website that's designed to, for that specific content marketing campaign. So the ad can target people there, but then the website itself can connect to social, and you can build community and so forth.
And let me butt in just a tiny bit, because
please do.
All this time that I was at Adobe, I was really doing content marketing for the press, and we never could measure it very well. The reason why we couldn't is because it was earned media that we were going after. Things like you, Bob. We're going after you. But
that's how we met.
Yeah, that's how we know each other. And so basically what I think is going on is that the things that companies put real big dollars behind, they find ways to measure, and the things that they actually use as content that doesn't have any sort of measurement behind it doesn't get submitted to these awards because it doesn't have an ROI value attached. And so, that's what I think is going on here, is that it's really advertising that does get all the measurement, and content marketing just doesn't, the way that I think of it, which is much more thought leadership and earned media.
I think you're giving a little too much credit for the metrics. I don't know what the Ad Age criteria was for making this award available to these buyers or to these producers, but I think you're giving them a lot of credit that measurement was part of the equation here, because it's just like these awards tend to be very focused on the creative and the execution and not much on the response or the results. It's effectiveness.
You're probably right.
Effectiveness.
You're probably right.
Yeah, effectiveness resides in anything that's in the direct marketing space and anything that goes to the Effie Awards. And besides that, we like to quote percentages and like random statistics that really, when you pull it apart, it's not really a measurement at all. And that's the only effectiveness metric that we end up with on a lot of these award submissions. But I think there's a bigger issue, and I think that Dave brought it up. I mean, are we doing a disservice to the content marketing world by awarding ads with content marketing awards? I mean, are we obscuring what's possible for content marketing when we start awarding awards to advertisements and saying this is the best in content marketing when it's clearly not? I mean, Robert had a lot of examples in his article that were a lot better, more comprehensive content marketing initiatives.
Yeah, and I think with content marketing, like with advertising, there is automatically a monetary connection. Like you pay for advertising, right? Where in content, you can create a content marketing plan that doesn't, I mean, besides the creation and the talent that you hire to create everything, but you don't necessarily have to advertise it, quote unquote.
I guess so, but I mean, it's just like, if we go by that definition, then all three of these, again, succeed because all three of these finalists were placed online. They weren't part of an ad buy, with maybe the exception of the HBO effort, because that was part of a kind of a joint effort with Bud Light. But, I mean, Sandy Hook Promise, it existed mainly online. I can't remember having seen it as a TV commercial or seen it on broadcast TV, and the Skittles the Musical long-form video is just, talking about this musical that they produced. So in a lot of ways, I think that maybe, I see Robert's point. I think that there's a lot to be said for this. that, when you start awarding content marketing awards to advertisements, you're not really paying attention to the breadth and depth of what's available and what's really working in the content marketing space. But at the other end of the spectrum, I'm kind of like, this might just be sour grapes. A big agency gets the award because they're a big agency and they have a big budget and they did something that was pretty stellar in the creative realm. And
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please do interrupt, because I'm just wandering around aimlessly at this point. I'm like an old man in a room touching things going, I remember this. Go ahead.
Get off my lawn. No, I would think, and again, I don't know the criteria of the awards specifically, but I almost think like with ads are ads and they stand alone, where content connects for more of an experience. So there may be a landing page or a website, there may be there may be like a nice video component to it, but there could also be, it could connect to social. It could have a photo series on Instagram, for example, or what have you. So it could, be run on multiple channels as opposed to like a specific video ad, let's say.
Yeah, I think that the heart of this argument is that content is more than just a really well shot video. And I think that's a legitimate comment, because I think when most people think about content, they think about BMW films, or they think about, one of the other content initiatives that was just beautifully shot film that entertained people for about 5 to 10 minutes. And suddenly that's content marketing. But content marketing is so much deeper, has so many more initiatives that engage the audience and get them interacting with these games and apps and other types of content plays that are much more interesting than just doing a video. And I'm wondering if, his point is well taken, that maybe these award shows need to broaden the understanding of what content marketing is. And that brings up my next question. Maybe I'll start with you, Tamara. Should there be a tighter definition for what content marketing is? Is that going to help anything?
Oh, well, you're talking to the laissez-faire in me person, which is, let everyone do whatever they want to. It is ad week after all.
It's ad age.
If they want to, showcase the advertising side of content, that's fine with me. I don't think it's all content, but I don't think they're trying to say it's all content. This is the ad week view of what was great. There are other forums, and maybe there should be more forums for those who are in content marketing at different levels. And those folks should have their own vision of what is, award winning. And maybe that's the best way to solve it, is to just let everyone have an award. Right?
Right. Everybody gets it. That worked out so well for so many generations for everybody to get an award.
That worked out for me playing sports as a kid.
There you go. See?
What I liked about Robert's stance on this, though, was he didn't take Ad Age to task as much as take the blame on himself and the people at the Content Marketing Institute, where he helped found. He took a lot of the blame on himself and said, maybe we haven't educated people enough about what's possible in this space. Maybe we haven't defined it well enough. And I think that introspection was what drew me to this article the most, and why I'm talking about it so much right at this point. It's just because I think that the industry really does need to self-reflect and decide what content marketing is. And Ad Age can do whatever they want. I mean, if Ad Age wants to award these ads content marketing of the year, I mean, it's just like, I'm still pissed off at Adweek for every single one of the podcasts, and their first podcast awards last year was, some major player in the podcasting space, and it wasn't really paying any attention to any of the independents out there in the marketplace. And I think that because it does podcasting a disservice. But it's their award. I'm not going to hold a grudge against Adweek. They can award anybody they want. That's the way they're going to do it. And I think Ad Age is the same deal. But this introspection thing, I think that this is a call for all of us involved with content marketing in any form to start really thinking through what it means to do content marketing. What's involved? I mean, is it just videos, or is it something more? And if it is something more, we need to do a better job of evangelizing it to the clients and to the media that covers it.
And to the judges too, I think, like those who judge for these awards. I mean, it'd be interesting. And again, I don't really know who did, but my gut would tell me advertising professionals did.
You think?
Right? So maybe, well, yeah, go figure. But, maybe they needed some quote unquote influencers or someone like that who is outside of the industry, but in the content marketing game.
Well,
they should have had you on the judging panel. That would have
There
made
you
it
go.
all fair, right? Who were these judges? I actually think it does call to question, what is content marketing? Because the definition that you just read from content rules is very vague. It's very broad. It covers pretty much everything. So, and I also think, nobody asked me to submit my content for an award, right? So I think it's really probably also who is actually aware of these award programs, and in some cases, who can afford them, because some of them cost money to submit for an award.
Well, in full disclosure, the Content Marketing Institute advertised on my show last year, so they are a sponsor. But one of the things that they wanted to do when they were running that ad campaign on my show was they wanted to reach out to the ad community and make sure the ad community was aware that they were there, because the marketers of the world, all the brands were going to their event. Like, they had every major brand in the entire world showing up at their event, but no agencies. And it was almost like the ad world, the ad agency world, is totally unaware of them. And someone like Robert or Joe should be on that panel. They should be on the judging panel, because they are the experts in content marketing. They are at the nexus of what's going on in this space. And the fact that they weren't included in that kind of event, or someone similar like maybe Ann Handley, who wrote the book. I mean, come on, have someone like that on the panel just to add some legitimacy to the content marketing aspect of things and maybe broaden the perspective of the judging.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there, we solved this.
Problem solved.
Well, I'll tell you one problem that's not solved is the streaming acquisitions going on. Comcast just bought streaming service, I think it's Xudo, X-U-D-O. Xumo. I got it there. It's joining a growing list of other media conglomerates who have bought streamers in an attempt to modernize. But according to Fast Company, these moves may be more about propping up failing revenues and not moving the companies forward at all. Tamara, take us through the issues faced by big media a little bit and how streamers are perceived to be helping them in any way, shape, or form. Because I remember when, I guess it was Viacom, now Viacom CBS, acquired Pluto TV. I mean, we even had Julian Zilberbrand on the show, and he was really excited about it. And I still don't understand what their business model is for doing that, other than it's another place to run ads and it's another place to run lots of content. Maybe you could give a little bit of clarity to what's going on here.
Yeah, boy, it is a very meaty topic. But to go into these streaming services, first of all, the Xumo streaming service is not a super big platform. It's actually quite small, and they're paying $100 million for it, which is really, by Comcast standards, not very much. So it's a drop in the bucket, really. When you sit back and look at what the company does, there's a variety of different reasons for a streaming acquisition. One of them is to acquire audience. Another is to acquire technology. And I think this one is really more about acquiring technology, because what they're doing is they're running on television sets with ad-supported streaming services. So there's something probably there, but the article goes on to talk about how they're probably hiding their lost advertising revenue in these acquisitions. I don't think they're going to prop up their revenue with a $100 million acquisition, but I do think that they're losing a lot of ad revenue and through traditional broadcast television. They're really trying hard to figure out what to do. But I also think Comcast, for example, owns my internet connection. So at some point, they just make up money by raising my rates.
Well,
I'm not worried about Comcast.
Something they said in the article really resonated with me, which is it's not so much that they get to run an ad on this content as much as they get to run an ad on this content that's also part of a package deal that's getting the real money, which is on their broadcast channel or whatever they're doing, a cable channel, what have you. And I can see that being a really great way to prop up revenue and get people excited, because it's like you get this streaming opportunity. So the brand's going, oh man, I'm going to be streaming. I've got some streaming buy included in this. I'm getting some extra for the money I'm spending on this network. That makes a lot of sense. For me, that is the clearest play to go forward. But how long does that last? And is it worth the investment and the time and the effort to bring on a streaming platform if that's all you've got in your mind about what to do? That this is going to be the clearinghouse for all our content, a place where our content can live in perpetuity and constantly generate ad revenue for us, in micro doses. At the same time, it's also a great way for us to go and sell more ads on CBS or NBC, whichever network you're on, and, kind of sweeten the pot to close the deal. And it seems like that's very short-sighted thinking. And I just can't see how that's the only thing they've got in mind, even when the acquisition's just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think really when you look at streaming wars, what you're seeing is a war for content ownership. And the fact they don't even mention it in this article, but the fact that Disney Plus has taken all of its content and said, you have to subscribe to Disney Plus now. And I foresee in the future, for example, that sporting franchises will take their content private. You have to go and stream the NFL network, and that's the only way you're going to see it, for example. And so I think this is a war over content, but this particular purchase doesn't seem to have any specific content. It does have some packaging. Maybe it has some target audience information. Maybe it has some technology. But other than that, I don't see how Comcast is going to win in the content wars, at least not off of this.
One thing I missed from the article too is, did they acquire talent as well through the acquisition? Like you look at like Twitch, for example, and that seemed like a logical purchase or investment or purchase, I guess, because so many people had channels on Twitch and still do. So I don't know really, and I didn't really get it from the article. Are you familiar with that or not?
Yeah, it actually did say in the article that they hinted that the acquisition hire element was that Xumo's leadership was impressive to them. And so that you're actually spot on. There is something about the leadership of Xumo that Comcast sees as a reason to acquire them. But leadership is usually around maybe a year after an acquisition, and very few people really stay on with a big organization after they've been entrepreneurs. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So, Dave, your company is Future Fourth. Take us into the future. What comes next here? If they're obviously we're after the talent from this company. Obviously, Viacom saw something in Pluto TV. All these efforts are going toward the streaming side of the business, trying to bring them in-house. It can't be just about the ads. It can't just be about clearinghouse for content. There's got to be some master plan that's bigger and bolder and broader that's kind of brewing in the background. What do you think? I mean, what would you say is the next move for them?
Right. Well, I think Tamara raised a really great point about, pro sports going into their own streaming services, and I think, gosh, when you think of I think of my own use of television, terrestrial television, and the only time I turn on the TV now, it would be for like a live sporting event, and I'm not even into sports, so that doesn't happen that often for me. But or like political, presidential campaigns or something like that, or award shows maybe. But aside from like those three, there's not really a lot of, and maybe some severe weather stuff. But for the most part, I'm not really sure. I think every company is scrambling to make sure that they are prepared and ready as audiences decline on terrestrial television. Now, I did notice though, like ad revenue is still forecasted to be 72.2 billion in 2023, and that's up from 71 billion in 2019. So, it looks like ad revenue is predicted to still increase. But I mean, I think as a long play, it makes sense to be getting into every other medium as you can. So this makes sense to me.
I'm confused when I look at this story, because it's just like NBC has Peacock, and you've got Comcast with their on-demand opportunities already built into their platform. They're already streaming content. Viacom has CBS All Access. I should say Viacom CBS. I'm not going to get used to that name yet. I mean, they've all got streaming plays. And the fact that they're adding these like little streamers in there, it's either just because we can do it and we're just going to integrate this in. It's going to be an incremental step toward getting some place for our content to live on forever and just generate little microdoses of the economy, the microdoses of the entire P&L or whatever. But I just don't see the big play here about what's in store with these technologies. I mean, Pluto TV is really interesting. Zumo sounds really interesting, but it doesn't sound so interesting that you would invest money in it because you've already got all these other platforms that are already in play. Is it just throwing money at the wall and seeing what sticks?
Well, it sounds a bit like they're throwing money at a few people and see if they can stick.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just looking at this way too deeply because it's just like, it's not about the technology. It's about the people. It's got to be about the people.
Well, and there could be something, a minor portion that is technology related. But, what we haven't talked about at all is how television sets are set up to include or not include certain streaming services. So, for example, I have some of my televisions will add Disney Plus and others will not. They just don't have the app. And it's just really interesting to me that televisions have not gone the way of mobile phones and either been iOS or Android based television sets so that we could get all of the apps and not have to, have different technology for these different smart TVs. It's very strange.
I heard a great thing on This Week in Tech this past week where they were talking about the investment. No, it might have been iOS today, but they're talking about the investment going on in like these interfaces by a lot of these third-party manufacturers of devices. And, these cameras that invest all this money in the screen and the technology and the programming and this terrible interface that nobody likes. I mean, it's just like, why not just make an app and have it on the iPhone or have it on your iPad or whatever, and you control the device through that. It's an interface that we like. And I see your point there, Tamara. And it's just like, why are we investing so much in the television when you can just create an app for iOS or Android and let that be the device that controls the television via Bluetooth? I mean,
it has to be that companies like, LG and Samsung, who make these amazing, beautiful, just awe-inspiring screens, want to cut. Somehow they want a cut of the money and they don't want to be open because there's no money in it for them. And I think that that's where they're going with it, is that they want a piece of the subscription somehow. If they're going to have the television on our wall, they want to make sure that they don't lose the revenue that comes from a subscription service. So I think that's why they haven't done it.
And beyond the revenue from the subscription service, these television manufacturers have a heck of a lot of information from our viewing habits. The little camera on your TV is there for a reason, right? Not to make you all paranoid, but I mean, these televisions are designed. That's why they're so cheap now. They're designed. They're like everything else. It's deeply cheap, but they're recording what you're watching there, and detecting when you're using your television and so forth.
And that could be something that's behind what Comcast is doing. I saw another article that Comcast has signed a deal with Nielsen Media Research to enable their television ratings with the Comcast data. So who knows? Maybe this is a data play. There's all kinds of potential reasons for it.
It's definitely a data play. That's been what's been on the mind of not just television manufacturers, but the cable companies for years. I mean, that's why cable boxes have these terrible interfaces. It's because they invested. Instead of taking an off-the-shelf solution or running Windows or Mac or iOS or some kind of operating system that's actually good and works and is well tested, and you're not going to have any problems with it down the line, knock on wood. But instead of doing that, we're going to invest these a few $100,000 in developing this crappy software package where we can grab all the data and the user has to fumble through awful menus. I mean, I can't believe the cable boxes are still as bad as they are. I can't believe the TVs are still as bad as they are in terms of interfaces. But it's totally what you said, Tamara. It's all about money and data. It's about locking down the user to that device instead of giving the user an experience that makes sense for them and that helps them actually enjoy the product more. You'd think they would figure that one out, because it's just like the data is one thing and there's ways to get it, but it's just like having people enjoy your product and buy it again and again is also an important part of this process of marketing devices.
Well,
Just
yeah.
these companies are so siloed. Like I've tried streaming from my iPhone to my Amazon Fire Stick, and of course you can't, at least that I know of, you can't do that because it's two different companies and obviously they're in competition with one another. So they don't play well together, which is extremely frustrating for the consumers for sure, and adds to the complexity of it all.
It's really true, but I don't know how many times I've heard behind the scenes sitting in a meeting where we're making product development decisions. Well, that worked fine for Apple. And so, I think that the closed system that Apple created and made so much money off of and has become such a huge, technology player, everyone thinks they can do that now.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't work that way. They're not Apple, friends. You're just not.
Right.
Well, yeah, Apple's got all the best engineers, just like Microsoft's got all the best engineers, and you're not going to get the best engineers because there's only a few best engineers, and they're working at Apple or Microsoft or one of the big companies, Google. So,
well, getting back to Comcast, do you think part of this is also a play just to stay relevant? You know how like these bigger industries, like let's say publishing or music, really fell behind because they didn't adapt, right? Adapt or die, as they say. So perhaps it's that too, because I mean, relatively speaking, this is still early days as far as streaming and online and where television is going. So I wonder if this is not, these companies scrambling to make sure that they keep up with the times as opposed to fall behind and then become, a relic.
Well, the rumble in the street is that Apple TV, the device, is going to be integrated into future TVs of some kind, not sold by Apple, but by third-party sellers, having the Apple interface. So, I mean, it's just like, I think the manufacturers are starting to get a clue, and we'll see some of that down the line. But boy, man, we went way off topic on this. We started off talking about
just
streamers.
20 minutes on BeanCast with that acquisition.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
let's $100 million into the BeanCast.
All my sponsors that I mentioned over the past half hour, I mentioned like two of them, I think. Anyway, a recent study has found what anyone with common sense could have told you already, that teens are the most vulnerable to fast food advertising. The question, though, Tamara, is should QSRs or quick serve restaurants be targeting teens in the first place? I've got mixed feelings about this one because, well, I'll let you answer the question, then I'll get into this. What do you think?
Okay. Well, I read the full article. I clicked on all the links. I tried to see the data, right? This is quoting data. And it says that it's a study that was done independently. I looked at it. The person who's done the study has a tremendous background in where they went to school, but I couldn't see the data. So I was a little bit just flummoxed. Why can't I see this data?
You mean you don't trust a research study that's being brought up in a marketing magazine? I can't believe you.
Yeah, I know, right? Just call me crazy, but there are ways of making data seem like it says whatever you want. It is being the data is being funded by a foundation that is interested in promoting more healthy lifestyles. So that seems like a reasonable place to come from, not at least too self-interested. But I just have to wonder, because we're just talking about how the advertising business is, at least in terms of broadcast television, is really on the decline. And now we're kind of saying, but fast food advertising is making teenagers obese. And I thought, well, geez, like if advertising was so great, if it's working so well, why would it be on the decline? So I really feel like this is an article that is just yet another in the series of, making us feel bad about how we are as parents, making us feel bad about how our kids are eating. And I'm not saying that they're eating particularly well, but let's be honest, my generation didn't eat particularly well either. So I'm not taking the mommy guilt on with this one. I'm just not.
I've read this article, and it's saying that teens are the most vulnerable to fast food advertising, and I'm just kind of like, teens are vulnerable to whatever's in front of them. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's not so much the advertising as much as it is they like McDonald's. They like Burger King. The advertising itself is
a lot of us like McDonald's and Burger King. I mean,
right.
Yes. French fries with salt, and they can be very yummy. I enjoy them. I'm not going to lie. And I have to say, my son gets school lunches at his school, and the things they feed him at school just curl my toes. I'm like, really? That was your lunch? It was not healthy. So let's take a step back here and just let's talk a lot about what our kids getting for meals during the day, during the school day. And a lot of them can walk to a fast food place if they haven't enjoyed the lunch that they could have gotten at their school, or the lunch that you gave them. I give my son things like, chopped up bell peppers, and he actually likes it. But, some kids would throw that in the trash and go to McDonald's.
That's actually something I've discovered with my 13 and 14-year-old is they always come home with empty lunch boxes. And I'm like, I'm really just thrilled that you guys are eating all this. And my daughter was like, oh no, like I give most of it away, and I usually get trade it for chips or something. I'm like, oh no, they broke my heart.
Yeah,
but I try.
Carbohydrates and sugar are addictive. I think there's not a lot of doubt about that. Whether or not we're going to go and blame quick serve restaurants for making children obese, I think we have to look at a whole bunch of things, sodas and chips and all the other things that we have that are so much more readily available to them than healthier choices, which have to be more fresh, and to get them into the schools and into their lunch boxes takes a lot more effort.
There's two things that
interesting to see, though. Yeah, I mean, currently, I was reading a story from the CDC that said that currently in the U.S. there are no policies or regulations on food advertisements for children 12 or older. The only regulation is that companies can't market products in schools that don't meet the nutrition standards of foods allowed to be sold at schools. But then, I know plenty of schools that have, Coke machines and so forth. So, and there was a story from Mother Jones. It's a while back. It was kind of an older story, but 80% of public schools have contracts with Coke or Pepsi. So it makes you wonder.
Well, a couple things that Tamara said really stick out for me, which is, first of all, that you got to look at the data. We got to look at the methodology here, because I mean, were they shown ads and then responded to those ads, and then that was the reason that you got this kind of fear that they're more vulnerable to the advertisements? Because if that's what the methodology was, then it comes into the other part of what Tamara said, which is that advertising is supposedly dying. And I know they're talking about more than just TV advertising. They're talking about all ads, I think, and all the marketing efforts going out toward teens. But I don't think teens are necessarily seeing and responding to advertisements out in the wild as much as we think that they are. I mean, they're just not. It's a different generation that I don't think that older people have even begun to grok what's going on here. We're just kind of feeling around in the dark here, trying to understand what's motivating kids, and they're not being motivated, I think, by this.
I talk a lot to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I talk a lot to my kids about, or try to, about dopamine and about, more about, social media and device addiction. But they are susceptible to things, to peer pressure, to, if their favorite influencers on YouTube are swearing by a new potato chip, you can bet that they're gonna want to get some. So
yeah, they are I do take that back. I mean, there are some opportunities that are much more effective at reaching this generation than a TV advertisement. It's not like all ads don't work on younger people. I realize that, but traditional advertising, which is what I'm thinking that they're talking about, some kind of TV commercial or banner ad or something like that. Yeah, I don't think that those are as impactful in this generation as we think that they are. And if you put them in an artificial situation where they're responding to these types of advertisements, it's not going to be a real world understanding of how they're reacting to these things in the wild. It's just going to be an understanding of how they're reacting to these things in the moment. And that's a whole different thing.
Well, and I think a lot of this article, when you really get down to it, it starts with research and says it's a data study. But what ends up happening in the article as you get towards the bottom is that it starts giving parents advice. And I think really what they're trying to do is to create a moment for the press to cover the eating habits of teenagers and to get the message out, which is, things like it says parents should talk to their children about accounts they follow on social media. They should cut back on TV watching. They should go to streaming commercial-free offerings. Ties right back into the Comcast purchase. And it talks about a variety of different things that I think most of us who have children, I have a 13-year-old and Dave has, two teenagers. We've heard this before. It's not most of us know about this. I guess there's some people who don't, but I highly doubt that they would read an article in ABC News that starts with data. Right. because that's targeting people like me. And quite honestly, I know the data. But to Dave's point, we can't really stop our children from doing things that are not ideal, no matter what we try. And like I said at the beginning, I'm just not going to feel guilty about it. We're doing the best we can. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think insurance companies should invest in advertising campaigns targeting, parents and kids. I think that would be wise.
Well, everybody else is doing it, so I'm going to join into the malaise of people talking about COVID-19, otherwise known as the coronavirus. Apparently, it is killing travel influencer programs now, in addition to killing people. It's a very serious disease. I don't want to make light of it, but at the same time, I've read this article that travel influencers are staying at home and afraid to travel because of the virus, and it's potentially impacting brands trying to do travel influencer programs. I don't know. Maybe I just have a jaded opinion about influencer programs at this point, Dave, but I'm like, okay, I don't really care, and I feel actually pretty good about this.
Yeah, the host of that Irish Airbnb don't have to deal with like snobby influencers. Do you remember that story from a while back?
Yeah, I do remember that. There's a South Seas resort that did something similar. It's just like had a beach resort. And, I've met a lot of great travel influencers, and I don't want to just besmirch the whole area, the whole arena here, because there's some really wonderful travel influencers who are doing great work, big fans. But there are even more horrible people in this sector than any other sector. I mean, it's just like something about travel, because you're coming in begging not for a $300 dress to try on. You're begging for a complete, all expense paid trip somewhere in an exotic location that can run tens of thousands of dollars. And they're so ballsy to ask for it to begin with, and it's just like, and they're not giving the same value back. They're like, well, I have me and my 14 million fans on Instagram. We're going to be at your place taking pictures.
Just think of the exposure.
So I'm like, maybe COVID-19 is a good thing for the travel influencer market. Is it like maybe, okay, this is going a really dark place. I can't go here.
No, I think there's definitely validity to what you just said, because I think there are plenty of people. I mean, it's hard to sympathize with people who have the dream jobs, like all of us would want to travel full time. I would think to exotic places. That would be wonderful. And there are many that are great at what they do and so forth. But I mean, And I'm also like just a huge fan of travel. I wouldn't have met my wife had I not gone backpacking in Ireland. So, you never know. So I'm all about travel. But yeah, it's hard to sympathize for folks in this specific industry, I think.
How often?
I'm with you guys. I feel like it's another story about this virus that somebody wanted to talk about, but it's really on the list of things that we're worried about related to coronavirus. This has to be pretty darn close to the bottom for me.
Yeah, I couldn't believe.
I really don't care if the travel influencers can't travel.
I mean, the article itself was almost offensive when I read it. I read that headline or looked at the article. I'm sitting there going, "Good God, don't you have something else more important to write about than what's happening to the influencers?" But I guess it's a legitimate story in the end because brands are dependent upon a lot of these influencers doing a good job for them out in the marketplace, going on these exotic trips, showing off their properties or showing off their air travel or showing off their suitcase in action in the field. And those programs are now on hold. I don't know that that's going to negatively impact any of them in the end. And maybe it's going to be if dare I say it, a come to Jesus moment where we just kind of realize that maybe influencer marketing is not as necessary as we think it is. It's still an effective tactic. Don't let me, turn you off to influencer marketing, but maybe it's not as important as we think it is. And this is a good moment for us to figure that out.
Well, and I think there's plenty of great, talented influencer, marketers or content creators. And I think, those that are most creative will be able to come up with some fun stuff to do, maybe that excludes travel for a little while, come up with a video series of, 10 great ideas to make your home feel like an exotic resort, or I don't know, so they might be able to come up with some fun stuff. I don't think it's the end of this at all. But yeah, I mean, to your point, there certainly will be, it'll certainly quiet down for a little while.
And the brands themselves that are losing to these travel influencers, they're losing revenue already anyways.
Oh, yeah.
And what I found when I was in advertising and I had a travel company, I actually had an airline that I did advertising for. And during the time I did advertising for them, one of their planes crashed. And we pulled all the advertising immediately. When you have a situation where people are really not into traveling, you pull back on your marketing because your revenue is going to go down. So you don't want to have the same spend you were going to have. So I think the brands are fine. Well, they're not fine, but this is not really going to damage them. Who I think is not probably going to be recovering are the influencers themselves, who are going to lose out on the money and the trips that they were planning.
Might have to get a real job. Okay.
Wait, so
I said it. I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. Go ahead.
Are you telling me there's no fire festival this year?
There is no fire festival, not this year. It went off so well last time, and they really want another one. Well, with that, it's time for the fair, fail, foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug. Starting with Dave Delaney. You can find him at futurefourth.com. That's the home of his consultancy, communications agency company, thingermadoodle thing. So tell us, what's going on in your world? What would you like to promote, Dave?
I will shamelessly promote a workshop that I've been doing with a lot of companies. They're half-day communication workshops on how to improve communication in the workplace, and that improves your culture as well. If you go to daveislive.com, that will redirect to the agency page that has the information about that. But I encourage your listeners to just head over, take a look, and reach out with any questions. I'd love to tell you a little more about that.
That sounds great. Where is the workshop happening?
It happens wherever you want me to come. So I did it for FedEx in Memphis just in January. So so I'll travel and come to you.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, people should check that out. Next up, Tamara Gaffney. You can find her at quantummetric.com. That's the home of the company where she works as the VP of Decision Science. Did I get that right?
Decision Strategy, I call it, because I want to be, everyone has to have the title strategy. It's just a thing, right?
It's a thing. So tell us what's going on in your world.
Okay, well, I have a bit of a data crush on my new company that I'm working for, Quantimetric. And the reason why is because not only do I have the data that I used to have before, which is the web traffic information, but I also have the mobile app information, and I never had that before. So I'm super excited because Quantimetric covers both mobile apps and web and kiosk and all of the other places where digital is. But even more, I get to actually see what the sessions that real users did look like. And so uh, it's just it's like a replay of watching someone without any of their private information, but watching someone try to find their way, clicking on a button that isn't really a button, and it's called a rage click. I didn't even know this existed. So I can
Mhm.
actually look at the data, but now I can go and look at the actual replay and see what was happening, so I know how to interpret the data. It's super cool. So very excited about it. We're going to be at Shopify. We're going to be at Adobe Summit. So hopefully you can come and find us and we can show you what that looks like.
That sounds exciting. That sounds like a real opportunity to understand the customer, not just, guess at the customer based on their data. So sounds really
Yeah.
interesting. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, my fair of the week. The clothing maker LaFleur has committed to dressing any woman running for office during this election cycle. Now, Tamara, I'm reading this and I'm thinking this is such a brilliant move because it's nonpartisan. It takes advantage of the election in a nonpartisan way, and it says we're going to showcase our product on whoever is running for any office, whether it's the local board of supervisors or it's going on up to presidential candidate. I mean, they're just leaving this wide open. I think this is a brilliant marketing idea. What's your thought?
Yeah, at first I was a little taken aback by it because LaFleur, which is beautiful clothing. I've looked at the website. I've never owned any of it. It just doesn't really quite fit me, but it is very professional looking. The thing is, like, it has very corporate woman looking, and sometimes running for office, you don't want to come across that way. So it's a great opportunity for people who do like that style. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it, but obviously they're doing it because it gets people talking. This is not just a gift to all people running for office. This is because they want us to talk about it, which is fine. I wonder how many women will actually take advantage of it, but I'd love to see other types of clothing manufacturers also offer something like this so that you can identify with a style that's more uniquely you if this corporate look isn't really how you want to be portrayed.
And when you read the fine type on this, they're not giving away the clothes. They're just allowing you to borrow the clothes during your election and during the campaign season. So I'm not so sure. It's like it's not like that
Yeah.
person's ever forever in a day going to be an ambassador for this brand. It's just they get to wear the clothes during the sessions. So it gets press. It gets us talking about them. I just think it's a brilliant move because of the fact that it's taking advantage of the election cycle without taking a side, which is interesting to me. I didn't think it was possible, but someone managed to come up with a pretty good idea. But you're right. Very few women, I think, are going to actually take them up on it, but I don't think that was the point.
No, it wasn't. It's advertising.
Now, on the fail of the week, what I chose was Corona, the beer, not the deadly disease, decided to go forward with the launch campaign for their new hard seltzer product with a headline. Now, get this, Dave, coming ashore soon. I mean,
Right.
right in the middle. I mean, they're already hyper aware of the coronavirus because I saw another story that said 38% of drinkers won't touch Corona beer for fear of catching the disease, which makes me think beer drinkers are so idiotic. But
Well, luckily the 38% has been dismissed. That was like some weird study of like 200 beer drinkers or something. So
Okay, all right.
luckily we don't have to, lose confidence on everybody, because that would be,
they're hyper aware of it because of all this
they have to be.
attention going on to the name. You know, you'd think that somebody there would have said "coming ashore soon" might be the wrong headline for us right now.
Right. Yeah. You'd think something more like, now making lime flavored IVs.
Right.
It's too soon.
Well, I mean, this is gallows humor. This is tongue in cheek. I mean, I just feel like we're all so freaking sensitive nowadays, but it didn't bother me. It really didn't.
No, it didn't bother me. Yeah. I'm sorry, Tamara.
I just feel like if we want to get on the whole like shame on Corona and I'm never going to buy them, which is what was quoted in this. You know what? They're kind of going with the any kind of word of mouth is good word of mouth. Once again, we're back in word of mouth advertising, just like LaFleur. And they're probably going to get a lot more people to try this Corona seltzer, hard seltzer, because of this than they would have if they had taken a soft approach and not gone down this road. That's the fact.
And they've always worked with like the whole beach motif, right? The whole like palm trees and oceans. So coming ashore it still makes sense. It's almost like this was, I expect it was planned regardless of the virus. So
this ad campaign was baked months ago. I mean, there's no way that they just came up with this as a result of the coronavirus. But
right.
yeah, it's just like they got a lot of heat for it, but it's just like in the scheme of things, you're all right. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it's like anybody who's so upset about this and saying they'll never drink Corona again is just not being intelligent. Let's just say that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean,
no, not at all.
Well, the foul of the week for me was molecule air purifiers, which have had tremendous claims. They talk about how they get down to a smaller particle-based filtration system that's better than a HEPA filter. They say that it's great for smoke, it's great for pollen. They said it even catches the coronavirus. They were making claims everywhere. And then
it slices, it dices.
And then Consumer Reports came out, and literally every single claim that this company has made about the purifier, they said, nope, doesn't do that. And they said, in fact, this is one of the worst air filters that we've ever tested in our life. For me, this was just a classic case of, it sounds way too good to be true, and that's because the marketing was fantastic.
I'd be curious to follow that brand and to see like how sales, like whether they continue, whether consumers actually even get the memo that it's all fake or that it's false,
Well, and just I don't know, to give them some credit, we don't know for a fact that all their claims are fake. We just know that Consumer Reports is a very legitimate testing consumer watchdog, and that they're usually pretty right about stuff. I did not personally test this filter. I have no way to tell whether or not these claims are right, but I'm kind of siding with Consumer Reports. If they say that they're not right, I'm going to have to believe them.
Yeah, and it's one thing to have a widget, a direct-to-consumer, thing, make a lot of money off of it. Maybe it's not so great. I mean, I've bought some of those myself, so it's not like they're alone in having claims that aren't really substantiated. But when you start saying that it's going to kill the coronavirus, and some people believe that, and then they think they're protected, that makes me worried.
Yeah.
I really don't feel like that's responsible and ethical to say that you're going to take care of a disease as scary as this one that we're faced with, and make people feel like they can not wash their hands or do whatever. The real things we need to do to avoid getting this virus are important. And to say that we're going to put this air purifier in and it's going to make us safe makes me really angry, actually, that they're going to destroy a lot of the good that the health department is doing to try and help us stay safe.
Thus, it's on the foul for the week. Yeah, I agree with you.
This was a really big foul for me.
Yeah, it really was. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for The BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C-Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.